Hi YouTube, here are my top 5 signs of autism, going from least predictive to most predictive as a general pediatrician. Number 5, does someone feel this child is autistic, and who is that person? Often we get referrals from parents concerned about autism. What's really important is to tease out in the history, are there other people that think this child is autistic? Particularly if it's from a teacher, a daycare teacher, or someone else in a health setting. This can be very valuable to tease out because it gives you the context of how they view the child. Is it because this child seems to be behaving a bit more like Uncle Joe and he hasn't a diagnosis of autism? Hence, we need to think hard about, could this be autism in this child? All of these things are very important to grasp as it allows you to figure out the expectations and what are the specific concerns and where they're being driven from. Number 4, a history of language regression. It's often a very proud moment for any parent when a child picks up a new word, starts using it, and also starts using it appropriately. So it can be very easy to understand the amount of devastation that occurs when a parent thinks a child knows a word and then those words are lost. There is a huge variation in language acquisition. There's controversial topics such as gender, culture, learning multiple languages at the same time, which all seem to be a factor. But losing language skills is definitely a sign that things are aberrant in their development and could be a very predictive sign of autism. Number 3, is the child described as being in their own world? Often we get many signs, symptoms, behaviors in autism, and these observations can be very difficult for caregivers to link, and there's often a search for the intention. I think they're doing this because they like this, or that means they're happy. Often I will ask the family, does it seem like they're in their own world? As in, we don't really know what this behavior means, and you don't know, but it seems to make sense for them. Sometimes, and pretty often, that's a huge amount of relief comes over the family, because it is very difficult with an autistic child to often know exactly what is linked to what behavior and if their intention is clear to us. I like the term "it's in their own world," and it fits with a Maori definition of taki watanga, which loosely translates to in their own world, as an entity in their own world. And I think that's a good description and can be very helpful for families when they're describing a whole lot of observations, behaviors, etc. Number 2, this is probably the most subjective one of the lot, and I wasn't sure to put this in number 2 or not. Hypo or hyper responsiveness to pain. Now this is in the DSM V criteria, is what we mainly use for the diagnosis of autism, but this one can be a bit subjective. But when you have a clear history, particularly that hyposensitivity to pain, that can be really quite notable for the family, and some of my autistic children have had quite serious injuries without much complaints. Similarly, the sensitivity on the skin can often be quite a good sign that there could be a diagnosis of autism potentially being made here. Number 1, the most predictive sign for autism in my role as a general pediatrician is the following question. Does the child play with toys in an unintended manner? Just to unpack that a little bit. Does a child play with toys, but they're using the toy in a way that's not obvious to us or not as intended by the toy maker? The common one years ago used to be Thomas the Tank Engine. You'd have lots of boys loving Thomas the Tank Engine. And how do you know they really like Thomas the Tank Engine, as opposed to they're quite obsessed with it and they're quite rigid and focused and hyper-focused on Thomas the Tank Engine? What I would challenge the parents and caregivers when I discuss this observation is really to think about, are they using the toy in the way that we would imagine the toy should be used? As in a train, is it making choo-choo-choo-choo-choo? Is it got a bit of a story? Is there things that happen? Or are they spinning the wheels? Are they lining them up? Which is not really what you see on the front of the box. If you can look at the front of the box and think, how does the child play compared to what the toy maker intended? Is there some sort of story here happening? Or is there some fixation with the mechanical parts? Those are my top 5 signs of autism. I was asked to do this in part by a registrar who came new to our team and said it's very challenging making the diagnosis of autism. And so I thought, as a challenge to myself, I'd try and coalesce my top 5 signs. Thank you.